Welcome back to Velocity 2011. I'm joined now by Tim O'Reilly. Tim, thanks for being with us.
Oh, glad to be here. It's amazing to see how this show has grown.
So, speaking of growth, are you surprised at all at the growth now that we're in the fourth year of Velocity?
No, I actually would say in some ways I'm surprised at how long it took for this whole area to develop. I think I first started talking about the need, for example, for us to publish books. I hadn't thought of the conference. That really was Steve and Jesse's idea, but to publish books on this area, right when Google first came out in '98, I was like, man, and you heard the stories of how they built their own server infrastructure and all this sort of back end, and it was pretty clear that there was going to be a lot more of that in the future. And a lot of people were now, there's only one or two companies at that scale, and it was clear to me pretty early on that this was just the beginning of a trend. I think I saw recently an interview with someone from Amazon where they said that the entirety of Amazon's first 5 years is now provisioned on AWS every day. So, it gives you a sense of how far things have come.
Right.
And, I think we'll look back on this period today and it will seem equally insignificant. It'll be just like when we talk about, cell phone having more computing power than the computers that took us to the moon in 1969, or for that matter, your sort of clock radio or whatever probably has more computing. And so we're still in the early stages of something very, very large in which more and more services are delivered to us ambiently, where we are. It's interesting because people think of mobile as being about mobile phones or maybe tablets, but it's far more than that, because first of all, these are connected devices. There's an interesting back end. Like a really good example of this is the Google autonomous vehicle. When the Stanley car from Stanford won the DARPA Grand Challenge in 2005, it really was an autonomous vehicle. The Google autonomous vehicle is actually tethered to this brain in the cloud. There's all this data where they've driven those roads before. And it's really interesting because it was humans who drove the road and taught the computer where the stop signs were, where the stoplights were, where the potholes were in the road. Street View was gathering data all the while. And that paradigm of man-machine cooperation, in which we're training our machines, it was at the center of Web 2.0, where all these great success stories were all about crowdsourcing in one way or another, collective intelligence. But there was always this other side, which is what's happening actually inside the machine. And there too, there's this man-machine symbiosis. I remember giving a talk at Amazon in 2003, where at an Amazon All Hands meeting, where I said, you are all inside the application. And that was what I talked about this morning, is this interesting class of computer professionals who are actually inside today's applications. They don't go away. Software used to be something that you built, you created, and then you set loose in the world as a kind of artifact. It was something you made and forgot about, or maybe you kept working on it, but it was disconnected. But now software is this ongoing process, and there are people who are using tools behind the scenes, and as I said this morning, it's unclear whether these are humans augmented by machines or machines augmented by humans. There's a new kind of symbiosis happening there, and the ubiquity is the real driver today. And I think if there's one thing that I don't think I certainly imagined when we launched this conference 4 years ago, was just how much this emphasis on performance and operations would really be extending out to mobile. If you walk around the exhibit hall, you see mobile testing, mobile performance. That really is the cutting edge of interaction. It is the big data back end in the cloud. There are cloud platforms that are extremely powerful, getting bigger all the time, such that today's giant cloud is going to be small by comparison in a few years, because they're going to be driving more and more devices, more and more interactions everywhere. And with more and more compute, you look at something like the Microsoft Connect and the kind of interfaces that technology will enable. And then you start thinking about that as the next wave of mobile, where we really are, talking to the ambient eyes and ears of a kind of global brain. Now, when I use the term global brain, it's referring really to the fact that this is something that Clay Shirky talked about at a conference I did back in 2001 on peer-to-peer and web services. We were at that point trying to start to tell a story. We had a conference called Building the Internet Operating System. And Clay told a wonderful story about Thomas Watson, the founder of IBM. And when electronic computers came on the scene, he said, I don't see a need for more than 5 of these in the world. And everybody laughed, because they were thinking of the hundreds of millions, if not billions, of computers that were in the world at that time. And Clay delivered a devastating punchline. He said, "We now know that he overstated the number by 4." And that really is what's happening. We are building one giant interoperable machine, the Internet as operating system. And again, remember, the Internet was originally defined as the network of networks. And the latest network that it has started to subsume is that mobile network. It all becomes part of this network of networks. And effectively, it's all being woven together loosely, in a loosely coupled way, with applications that are driven increasingly by data, increasingly driven by participation. And so this, and it really is a way in which we are augmenting ourselves. And it's interesting, because you hear a term like augmented reality, and you sort of imagine the heads-up display as the key element. But the current, and we will get there. I think eyeglasses that have a little display. You're already seeing it in ski goggles or cycling goggles, whatever. But even just on that mobile phone, it is augmented reality when you can look down at your phone and say, show me Chinese restaurants near here.
Sure.
Or, show me when the next train is coming, or the next bus on public transit. That is an extension to our senses. And it's really remarkable how we are being extended, our intelligence is being extended by our connection to the network. Now, some people, like Nick Carr, says, oh no, the Internet is making us stupid, it's making us shallow. And my answer to that is always to suggest that people read the beginning of the Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel. It starts with a conversation he has with a fellow walking on the beach in Papua New Guinea. And the guy says, how come you guys have all the cargo? That's how they refer to the sort of the stuff of the modern world. You're so stupid. He said, we'd take you in the jungle for 3 days and you'd be dead, if you're left by yourself. You don't know anything.
Sure.
And, so from one point of view, our modern civilization made us stupid, but you obviously see that it also made us smarter. And I think that's always the nature of some of these advances. We are taking certain things away and we're adding others. We have access to vast amounts of information at our fingertips, and we literally have augmented our senses. We're now carrying a device that knows exactly where we are.
Sure.
And there's some real risks to that, just like there are risks to our other aspects of our previously modern civilization, where you take away some of the tools and the weapons and we were helpless. Well, take away some of our modern tools and we may be more helpless, but give them to us and we are truly augmented. And I think there's some really interesting aspects to this that are very relevant to velocity and the tidal velocity. Information services are increasingly real time. Jeff Jonas had this wonderful riff that he did as an IBM commercial a few years ago, in which he said, would you be willing to cross the street with information that was a minute old?
Right.
You know, and it's you look, and again, I've driven in the Google autonomous vehicle, and it's quite remarkable. You know, here is this device which is using local senses. You know, it has machine vision. It has on wavelengths that we don't know. It has radar. It has all kinds of different things that it's using to tell where it is. It also has this memory. You know, it says, oh yeah, I'm on this road. You know, has the sense of location from GPS and cell towers and all these electromagnetic senses that are beyond us, and it's responding in real time to those things. You know, some combination of local intelligence and this cloud intelligence. Anyway, so I guess for me, this conference is about how we build, that cloud intelligence. You know, the people who come here are the people who are making that future work. You know, and because it's easy to think of it as, again, we grew up with software that somebody built once. And there are elements of that, to be sure. You know, there's a new release of iOS, for example, or a new release of Android, and there's sort of some traditional software that got built. But it's connected to these dynamic services that are working all the time. And there are people who are helping make them work. I mean, certainly there's a lot of automation, but there's also this human element. I remember, again, I came to this through thinking a lot about open source software and what were the implications when software became commoditized. I thought it's not just going to be, there's all this free software, and any more than when the PC commoditized hardware, it was all that, IBM's monopoly was over, but Microsoft took over. I thought, well, what's going to come next? And there was this new world that would be driven by large data-driven services, which we're now in the midst of. And the thing that I remember having a conversation with Richard Stallman in 1999 at a conference in Berlin. I was during the Q&A after my talk, and I remember saying to him, even if you had all of Google's source code, you wouldn't have Google, because there are business processes, there are people who have to do things every day, or it would stop working. Right. The spiders have to run, but the spiders don't write themselves. Somebody has to update them. They have to write new code to deal with new situations. There's new spam, and so somebody has to come up with new techniques to counter it. And so there's this synthesis, and of course there's this operations side, performance, which are really the heart of this conference. In order to make this increasingly real time at a scale that was literally unthinkable only a few years ago.
Right. So, last question for you: How do you see this space developing over the near term? Say, next year, what do you think the major themes are that we're going to be discussing? Is it mobile? Is it the synthesis that you're talking about?
I think it'll definitely be a lot more mobile. I don't know whether it'll be next year, but I think we're going to see a lot more machine vision. For me, I have sort of this general theory of innovation, which is new areas of innovation almost always start with people having fun. And I've just been blown away by the way people responded to the Kinect. People are hacking on it in really, really creative ways, which says that we're reaching that inflection point for machine vision, and that's going to become a first-class set of interfaces. And of course, that's going to drive all kinds of interesting new applications, all kinds of interesting new services. In the beginning, they're going to be toys, but then they're going to have to be scaling up. And it'll be really interesting to figure out what are the operational consequences of that. Because, of course, what that starts to enable is what appears to be deviceless computer interfaces. You start imagining walking into a building and talking to what appears to be thin air. And for example, the building is a device connected to this global brain. you think about walking up to your car and it unlocks because it recognizes you.
Right.
You think about what we already see are the medical applications where people are using it for various kinds of monitoring. We had a health hackathon where somebody put together a Connect application for monitoring the progress of Parkinson's tremors.
No kidding.
Which was super cool.
Huh.
And I think I think that's going to be a big area. I think speech recognition is going to start going more mainstream over the next few years. And again, combination of big data and then, of course, the infrastructure that's required to make these, smaller and smaller, perhaps even invisible devices intelligent. It's not, some of the intelligence goes into the device, but a huge part of it is back there in the data center.
Right.
And the people who are at this event are the people who make that work.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.